So for the first time in the US, we get to talk about this. This is the Oneplus 12R, and it's kind of like the more affordable sidekick to the Oneplus 12. For starters, I'm just going to put the general specs of each phone on the screen so you guys can take a look at that on your own time. Feel free to pause the video if you want. But throughout the rest of the video, I want to talk about what I consider to be some of the pros and the cons of going with the 12R versus the 12. So for the most part, it gives you the same size, look, and feel of the 12. The overall display is roughly the same size. It's slightly smaller on paper, but honestly, it's hard to tell much of a difference in person. On the front, you have Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and then on the back, you actually have a smooth glossy finish, which is a lot easier to handle compared to the matte finish on the Oneplus 12. If you watched my other video on the Oneplus 12, you'll know that I said in that video that you definitely want to invest in a case for that phone because trying to use it without one is definitely risky. That phone is very, very slippery. But when it comes to the 12R, having that smooth glossy finish makes this a much more viable option if you're anti-phone cases. So since I've had the phone, I've had no case on it, and so far it hasn't slipped or fallen out of my hands. I haven't dropped it or anything like that. So again, if you're that type of person that likes to go without a case for size or bulkiness reasons, this one feels pretty good in the hand. It's a lot easier to hold, like I said, compared to the 12. Now on the flip side, having that smooth glossy finish does mean that the phone does collect some fingerprints here and there, especially if you have oily hands. But if you go for the lighter color, this blue color, which you can see right here, it's honestly not that bad. If you compare it to something like the OnePlus Nord N30, which had a similar glossy finish, but the color was much darker, this is not really on that level. And if the fingerprints do bother you that much, it's pretty easy just to give the phone a quick wipe down with your shirt or something like that. And for the most part, they go away. You've got a very similar camera module compared to the OnePlus 12. Although the camera module on the 12 is a bit more pronounced and looks a bit more premium as you would expect. On the sides of the phone, you got this nice aluminum frame. You have your volume rocker and power button on the right side. And then just like the 12, you have your notification switch on the left side. And you've got stereo speakers on the bottom as well as the top. So let's go ahead and get into what I consider to be some of the pros going with the OnePlus 12R. And number one is going to be the display. On paper, it doesn't quite match up to the specs of the OnePlus 12, but in person, I think it looks great. You've got excellent colors. Just like the 12, you have a 120 Hertz refresh rate, and it's able to adjust just like the 12 from 1 Hertz all the way to 120 Hertz, depending on the content that you're viewing, as well as your interaction with the display. So the faster you scroll or the slower you scroll, it's going to adjust to that and give you the necessary refresh rate that you need. Now, you're not getting the same peak brightness as the 12. If you put them side by side, you can kind of pick up that the OnePlus 12 does get a little bit brighter. But even with that, whether you're indoors or outdoors, you don't really have to strain to view the display. So again, on paper, it doesn't quite match up to the 12, but for all intents and purposes, I think the display is excellent. For me, the second pro would be the biometric security. Both the fingerprint sensor and the face unlock feature are extremely consistent. And again, if you saw my other video on the OnePlus 12, you'll know that for the past year, the S23 Ultra has been my daily driver, and the face unlock on that phone is not nearly as consistent as it is on the OnePlus 12 or the 12R. So that's definitely a feature that I've been enjoying when it comes to these OnePlus phones. From there, the next pro that I would have is just the overall performance. You're getting a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, which is the exact same processor from the OnePlus 11 from a year ago. So you're getting all the same processing power that you got with the previous OnePlus flagship phone. And OnePlus is saying that since they've had more time with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip, that it's actually more powerful and more efficient than it was before. So whether you're into hardcore gaming, hardcore multitasking between multiple apps, whatever it is, the 12R handles things very well. It's very smooth, and it just gives you a very seamless user experience. The next pro we got to talk about is the battery life, and that might be the most impressive thing about this phone. It actually has the largest battery that OnePlus has ever put in a phone, which is 5,500 milliamp hours. And over the past couple weeks, I've been able to consistently get 2 days of use out of this phone before needing to recharge. Now, obviously, if you're gaming or, video recording or doing very labor intensive type tasks, that's going to eat into your battery life a little bit. But when it comes to just standard use, communication, phone calls, text messages, some social media browsing, maybe watching a few YouTube videos here and there, this thing is an absolute beast. And when it is time to recharge, you're getting the same 80-watt fast charging that you get on the OnePlus 12, which can take you from 0% to 100% in roughly 30 minutes. And this is one of those things that once you experience it, it's hard to go back to anything less. The battery life as it is already amazing, but once you factor in that fast charging capability, there's virtually zero downtime with this phone. From there, the next pro I would say is the 50 megapixel main camera. For the most part, it gives you the same level of quality as you get from the main camera of the OnePlus 12. If you look closely, you will notice more vibrant colors as well as more contrast out of the OnePlus 12, but I would actually say that the 12R has a more natural look. Now, when it comes to the other cameras, that's a little bit of a different story that we'll cover when it comes to the cons, but if you stick to that main camera, you can definitely get some quality photos out of the 12R. The next pro I would say is thermal management. The 12R has the same cryo velocity cooling setup as the OnePlus 12, so when it comes to activities that generate a lot of heat, gaming, charging, or both at the same time, the 12R keeps things at a very manageable temperature. And last but not least, as far as the pros, I would actually say the IR blaster. And this is something that you get on the 12 as well as the 12R, and it's not really something that you see on most smartphones these days, but it is nice to have. So now every time your kids lose the remote to the TV, you can pull out your OnePlus 12 or 12R and use it as a last minute resort. So now let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about some of the cons when you're going with the 12R versus the 12. For starters, I would actually say the audio. You do get dual stereo speakers on both options, but if you play them back to back, as far as volume, they're about the same, but you do notice a slightly fuller sound coming from the OnePlus 12. From there, I would say the lack of wireless charging. With the OnePlus 12, not only do you get wireless charging, you get wireless charging at a speed of up to 50 watts. So if that's a feature that you're used to, that is a sacrifice that you have to make when it comes to the OnePlus 12R. Next up on the list, I would say the ultra wide as well as the macro camera. They are not nearly on the same level as the ultra wide and telephoto camera that you get on the OnePlus 12. Also, you're capped out at 20 times zoom compared to 120 times zoom on the 12, so not nearly as capable as far as taking photos from a distance. And last but not least, when it comes to video on the front-facing camera, you're maxed out at 1080p on the 12R compared to 4K on the 12. So naturally, you're going to notice a softer image. For the most part, those are the main differences that I've noticed using the 12R compared to the 12. Overall, all things considered, I think the 12R is an excellent mid-range phone and probably one of my favorite mid-range phones ever. Just like the 12, they do have some pre-order deals going on for the 12R, so definitely check those out. Links will be in the description. And aside from that, hopefully you found this video to be helpful. If so, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And aside from that, as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.